guys, how's it going? My name is Jalopy Jeff Sutton with the Collector Car Network. That's ClassicCars.com, AutoHunter.com, and the Journal. And today we're going to be taking a look at a 2023 Lexus UX250h F Sport, which is a compact crossover self-charging hybrid. But before we can show you all the details on this vehicle, first, a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's video is sponsored by Land Air Sea. Keep tabs on all your valuable assets from the palm of your hand. Remember, with Land Air Sea, theft is temporary. Visit landairSea.com to order your Land Air Sea GPS unit for your classic vehicle.
Okay, so today we're going to be taking a look at the 2023 Lexus UX250h F Sport. So these cars, the UX250h as a whole, starts priced just over $36,000. Our particular car we're going to be looking at today is priced up at just over $47,000 as the F Sport handling model, which is the extreme top end of the market for these cars. Now, the 250h is only available as a hybrid here in the US, but it does have your option of both front-wheel drive and all-wheel drive, with the powertrain remaining standard across the whole board. And this is generally considered a compact car, but it's also considered a self-charging hybrid, which means there is no plug-in hybrid system, but a variety of regen and things like that that comes equipped with the hybrid powertrain in this vehicle. So what we're going to do today is we're going to start with the exterior, we're going to move to the engine bay, the interior, and then of course we'll take it for a drive. So starting with the exterior of our F Sport UX250h, we have this beautiful blue, which is called ultrasonic blue mica. Now, one of the things you'll notice is because we have the F Sport, we actually have a slightly different front end. So we have some more aggressive side accents here, and of course the front grille is actually changed as well. Now, one of the really interesting things about this is I've pointed it out in some of our other reviews of Toyota Lexus products, is typically the Toyota or Lexus badge on hybrid vehicles will come with a bit of bluing just around the center there, and that's to symbolize that it is the hybrid version. Now, like I mentioned earlier, this UX250h is only sold as a hybrid in the US, so anytime you see one of these on the road, you can go ahead and just assume, of course, that it's going to be a hybrid. One of the other things you can see from the front is, of course, our leveling headlamps, which are available again as one of the F Sport options. As we move around to the side, one of the other things that's specific is even though we have some black accents, we actually have some color keyed fenders here as well. So normally these will come in a black plastic finish, but on the F Sport, they of course have been painted just to add to the overall aesthetic and make it look a bit more premium as a Lexus product. Below that, we do have some 18-inch Lexus wheels there, and those are a beautiful graphite color with some pretty sizable steel disc brakes behind that. Next, we have our F Sport badge. So F Sport actually stands for Fuji Speedway, and F Sport implies that this is going to be the performance version of this vehicle, in which case our F Sport model comes equipped with the adaptive variable suspension, which is supposed to be there to help and sort of make the vehicle handle a little bit better, but everything else performance-wise is generally the same with this vehicle, which I'll talk a little bit more about later as we get to the engine and driving portions of the video. As we move along here, we have some folding mirrors that adjust. We do have a beautiful black roof with our darkened black roof rails as well, and then that is our obsidian that kind of contrasts with our beautiful blue mica. Okay, so now we're taking a look at the exterior of our UX250h. So we have our obsidian black roof, comes to this beautiful little spoiler here. Then we have a fairly steep rake that goes back to our taillight, which goes all the way across the rear hatch, and yes, the entire thing lights up as well at night, making it look like a Porsche 911. Then we have a Lexus badge and our all-wheel drive UX250h hybrid badging there as well. So let's go ahead and let's open up our motorized hatch, which the kickstep is actually optional on this car. You can see it's motorized both up and down just by the push of the button, key fob, and even an interior button. Then with the back hatch open, we have 17.4 cubic feet of space. Now, because that's not the most obvious way of measuring a trunk space, we have for you here a 24 count of toilet paper that we're going to put in the back. And then you can get a better idea of what 17.4 cubic feet of space gets you, unless you're a mathematician or an engineer. But that's what it looks like there. So now that we've taken a look at what this can hold in the back, let's go ahead and let's take a look at what's going on in the engine bay. Okay, so we're going to be taking a look at our Lexus powertrain. So in the UX250h, you will find a 2-liter 4-cylinder hybrid engine system that produces a net 181 horsepower across the board. And this is the same engine that's available in every single trim level, whether you buy the base or whether you buy the top end version like this F Sport all-wheel drive. That is then mated to a CVT transmission, which Lexus has engineered to feel like a standard geared transmission as opposed to the conical drive that you'll find for a CVT. So The EPA rates that at about 41 city and 38 highway. Obviously, some of that has to do with shutting the engine off and some of the electric charging, self-charging hybrid systems that are available in the vehicle. But in our time with the vehicle, we actually found ourselves getting over 43 miles per gallon just in regular driving. We weren't taking it overly economical, weren't being super light on the gas pedal. So that's really impressive to see that the gas mileage for this thing is actually outrating the EPA. Now, another thing is to point out the sort of weird speed differences in this car. So, for example, there is an all-wheel drive and front-wheel drive version, as I mentioned earlier, but the all-wheel drive version has a 0 to 60 of about 8.6 seconds, with the front-wheel drive version being slightly faster at 8.4 seconds. While those aren't blisteringly fast times, those are kind of variation. Usually you would expect all-wheel drive to be faster. In this case, I would expect all-wheel drive is more focused for traction environments, being that it's probably a little bit heavier on the drivetrain, even though there is no drive shaft in this, with the electric motors powering the rear wheels and being mostly full-time front-wheel drive until it needs to use the all-wheel drive. So that's what I imagine a lot of that is. You can even use that to manage the computers, and which we'll get to in the interior. But a pretty interesting mix of things, especially being that the only performance part in terms of the F-Sport comes with that suspension on the side, everything else being the same, along with some other exterior bits and things like that, which is kind of a shame. But let's move on to the interior next, and we'll show you what's going on in there. Okay, so now we're on the interior of our Lexus UX250h. And now the first thing you'll see right off the bat is this stunning interior color. This is called Circuit Red New Lux, and this is a great contrast to our beautiful mica blue on the outside. I think the blue and red works fantastic together. And because we have the F-Sport, we actually have some perforations, not just in the seat and along with F-Sport in the header. We also have perforations on the steering wheel and perforations that can be found on our shifter as well. So some of the looks, some of the inspiration per Lexus, these are Lexus's words, was to guide it towards the Lexus LFA, and it has things that even are featured in the LC500, like our little bezel here that can be shifted to move and change your heads-up display. So it's kind of an F-Sport gimmick. It doesn't really add any value to the car. You'd have similar displays with the standard models, just something they added to make you feel a little bit better about the car, make it more F-Sport and feel more grunt and sort of a gimmick in that sense. Another thing that comes as part of a gimmick is the sort of aluminum door sills that say F-Sport on them, the aluminum pedals, but there are some other features that do come with the F-Sport in the interior. So here we'll find your typical Lexus display as far as where the traction control and both driving modes are available, and the F-Sport features Sport Plus. The standard models only go up to Sport. Along with Sport Plus, we also have our silver paddle shifters here, which are hidden behind the wheel. You will get the manual shifting option in the standard cars, but you don't get the paddle shifters. So that is specific to the F-Sport model. So if you really need to have paddle shifters in your UX250h, you need to buy the F-Sport model. So that's what you get there. But like I said, a lot of that still comes standard. Now, moving on to the other parts of the car, we have a upgraded display in the center here as well. This is a 12.3-inch display, absolutely massive, new for 2023, which is, I believe, 2 inches bigger from the previous models. And this also features Android Auto and CarPlay, both wireless options, I should point out, by the way, which is a pretty big deal. It makes it more useful. It's nicer to have just for everything to automatically set up that way when you get into the car. Below that, we have our climate control, which are these toggle piano key style vents that feel pretty tactile and clicky, and I really appreciate them. They're really easy to use to set up however you want to set it up. Below that, we have our wireless charger along with 2 USB Type-C ports. Then we have our cup holders and our perforated shifter I mentioned earlier, along with our ventilated and heated seat controls, which are optional, and so is a optional heated steering wheel if you wanted to go that route, which our car doesn't actually have, but this would be in the same spot if you had that equipped on your car. I don't particularly like the way these buttons feel. However, they work fine and I haven't had any issues with them, so we'll go ahead and go past that. Next, we have the EV mode button. The EV mode button is a little bit of a gimmick. I mentioned that this is a self-charging hybrid. Now, you can use the EV mode, and when you start the car, it of course starts silently in EV mode, but EV mode's really only available up to like 18-20 miles an hour before it shuts off. If you accelerate too quickly, it shuts off. So really not that useful, but it's there if you decided you wanted to use it. Brake hold button, and then of course we have our standard Lexus setup, so you can manage all of your displays, volume control, cruise control, all of that's available on here as well. A lot of the rest of this is really just standard Lexus stuff that you would find, including motorized adjustable seats. Now, I do have one gripe And that's the way this setup is. So for me personally, this vehicle can feel a little bit cramped. I'm about 6 feet tall for reference here. When I was trying to set up the vehicle to my liking, I noticed I actually maxed out how high you could lift the steering wheel. So it actually has a fairly level, this is maxed out by the way, but you can actually extend it towards you and that can raise it a little bit. But I felt like if I just had a few more degrees of adjustment upwards, I could find the perfect driving position for me. So if you were to go take this for a test drive at a dealership, maybe double check that you can get the seat just the way you want it if you're going to have this vehicle for a long time. But that's a quick look at everything in the front seat here. So now what we have to do is we have to see if I can fit in the back seat of this car. Okay, so now we're going to get in the interior and I want you guys to experience this. Okay, so I was able to get in here, get in the seat. As you can see, my knees have now broken the driver's spine. I'm about 6 foot, again, for reference, 220 pounds. You can see that my head actually doesn't touch the ceiling, but my hair does brush on it, and my knees are definitely into the seat. So this is actually a little bit further back. If you were to press power and start the car, this would move forward a little bit, but there's not a ton of space back here. I would say this is potentially usable for kids. I wouldn't necessarily put full-grown adults back here. Not much seat room, and then there's some more chargers and stuff back here. One of the things I should mention is there's a lot of plastic throughout the car, which yes, I get is a bit of weight savings and even cost savings to try and keep the price down for this car, but some of it feels a little bit cheap, a little bit flexible, and I'm not really a huge fan of that, especially if you're going to be spending a premium by buying a Lexus. But let's a quick look at the back seat. Pretty simple here, no extra cup holders, no thrills. Just really, it's just here if you need it. And of course, the front seat as a commuter car, as your regular use car, it's going to be expected mostly just to have yourself in this car. So that's a pretty quick look at this. But I think it's super important now that we take this car for a drive. Okay, so now we're going to take the UX250h for a drive. So actually, what you don't know is the fact that this car is actually already running and you don't hear anything going on because, like I mentioned earlier, when you start this up, it starts completely quiet. But the minute you put it in reverse, let's say, you then get that whining, which of course is to try and let people know, hey, I'm backing up even though I'm quiet. And you put it in drive and it's still an electric, but once we get going, you'll hear the engine kick on. So let's start driving the UX250h. So currently, still electric, and then the driving as far as the steering portion isn't that bad. It's heavily boosted, let's say, like you would expect from a lot of Lexus and Toyota products, but it's not actually so bad that I can't stand it. And it's probably a pretty good thing as far as if this was going to be your daily driver, your commuter, you don't want it to be overbearingly heavy. Now, what that brings me to is we could talk about some of the different driving modes. So this car is equipped with a couple different driving modes, some of which are added on because we have the Sport Handling package. So obviously, normal and custom is where you'll find yourself most often. Now, custom is self-explanatory. Normal is expected for your everyday driving, which is where we've left the car and where we've managed to get over 43 miles per gallon in our car. Below that, you have Eco, which we haven't felt the need to put the car in at all. The car's been fine. It gets great gas mileage. What I will say is even without Eco mode on, there's a little bit of this sort of sluggishness that just kind of comes with it being a hybrid, I suppose. It has the stereotypical Eco into power to tell you when you're accelerating too hard. I don't personally like that because it feels very sluggish, and that 0 to 60 times not very impressive, so this car won't really get up and go. And if you had it fully loaded, I imagine it feels pretty sluggish. Now, moving on to the other side of the spectrum, we have Sport and Sport Plus. So Sport, of course, is your standard sort of, makes it try to feel a little bit more preppy, but really Sport Plus is where the car is meant to shine. Now, obviously, I said that's specific to the F-Sport model, and that's because it can adjust the suspension a little bit more, that adaptive variable suspension that's specific to the F-Sport as well, and it can adjust that a little bit more, try to make the car feel a bit more preppy of where it's pretending to keep the gear ranges. Again, this is a CVT transmission, so it's not actually going to be shifting, and your gauge cluster change tries to make it feel a little bit more racy. It pumps more sound into the cabin. So this is actually a really quiet vehicle outside of sound getting pumped in when you want it to make it feel like, it's accelerating, it's sporty, all that type of stuff. As we're sitting here at this light, one of the things I want to mention is the braking. Sitting in either stop and go traffic, driving throughout Phoenix, one of the weird parts is this brake, and it's not specific to this car by any means. It's just a hybrid thing in general, but these hybrid cars, when you brake on them, it feels like you're either giving 5% brake or 100% brake. Like there is no in between. It's hard to come to a smooth stop. So if you find that experience, don't worry, that's not you. That's typical in a lot of these hybrid cars. As we move through, now you do have a variety of mirrors, cameras, and stuff that's all available as part of the Lexus 2.5 safety sense that's available, and you even have a heads-up display that can actually be turned on or turned off as you choose. Now I will mention there's a little bit of a blind spot because of the way that the hatch kind of sits in this car. You'll notice that there's a little bit of a blind spot which can kind of be viewed around with the mirrors. The mirrors even try to help you when parking along with the cameras and stuff that I said exists, but it is something to be aware of and make sure that you don't get yourself into trouble when using it. Then it's a matter of the fuel economy. So this has about a 10.6 gallon fuel tank in it. And like I mentioned, we were getting really good gas mileage, better than what the EPA said, but you'd be surprised how quickly that goes because it is still a small tank. But the good news about that is when you decide to fill the car up, it's a pretty cheap fill at that. Then just to touch on driving comfort briefly. So in here in the center here, this is actually really comfortable. It feels like Lexus put some extra padding into the center console, and I can tell you that that's much appreciated, even on the door side here. So this would be a perfect candidate for taking on long road trips. You're also getting good gas mileage. While you're working on all of that, you have a good UI, everything's available, cruise control, and you have a ton of comfort features with both the ventilated and heated seats that have been perfect for the chilly mornings we've been having in Phoenix. So really, that's it. That's pretty basic look at taking a look at the UX250h. There's not a lot to talk about because this is a fairly simple, straightforward vehicle that offers a beautiful blend of fuel economy while trying to give you a little bit more of that space with a seating position that's not quite an SUV, but maybe just a smidge taller than a car. Of course, being a little bit more adjustable depending on what you're looking for, but that's what you get. It's just a bare bones, good fuel economy with Lexus luxury is the basic plan of this. The F-Sport model feels like a little bit of a gimmick, and I'm not sure it's worth springing for because it is a little bit on the expensive side as far as what the extra options cost, but if you need that extra performance, it is available. And like I said, there's a couple other features like our handy dandy moonroof that come included in that package. So do your research and see if that's really the route that you want to go, or consider maybe a premium option instead, or even the base model. If you're interested, at the end of the day, we suggest taking a test drive at your local Lexus dealer because we can tell you what we think of it, but it's most important that you know what you think and what you like about the vehicle as well. We just hope to have a little bit of influence and let you know what's available so you can do your own cross-shopping essentially. So with that, that's going to be the end of the video. If you're interested in, let's say, purchasing a collector car for yourself as well, be sure to check out autohunter.com, our online auction, or classiccars.com, which is our online marketplace. Both have cars getting regularly listed on both of them. So lots of cool classic car options on there, or collector cars, I should say. And if you guys enjoyed this video, could hit that like button for us. We'd really appreciate it. And consider subscribing for more content like that in the future. Thank you so much for watching.